Good morning, everyone. So for our next stop, it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Stacy Grundy. Dr. Grundy joined the Early Childhood Leadership Academy last year as a 2022 Executive Fellow and has actively partnered with policy and leadership, and she's taught us so much since then as the co-CEO of Root History Museum in Springfield, which our team had the honor of visiting back in April of this year. Stacy has over 14 years of experience as a public health practitioner and consultant, community-based researcher, and social entrepreneur. And she is the former interim director for Southern Illinois University System Office of Community Engagement. At SIU, Stacy's work was used to inform legislation that created the Healthcare Transformation Collaboratives Program, a program that aims to close gaps in healthcare services and eliminate barriers to access in Illinois' healthcare system. Today, Dr. Grundy will share how she has found the baby in her efforts to expand her museum and engage children in learning about how Route 66 connects to the Black experience. Everyone, please extend a warm welcome to Dr. Stacy Grundy.
Hello, everyone. So I know some of you might be a little confused on how Route 66 is connected to finding the baby. So I am not a museum curator. I am not a history major, but I am a public health professional. And what my job is to be able to look at health broadly and to see all of the connections. And so as a public health professional, while working on my doctorate of public health, I was working at SIU School of Medicine. My co-owners and I founded Route History. And so I do want to recognize them. My fellow co-owners are Dr. Gina Lathan and also Mr. Kenneth Lockhart. And so you can go to the next slide. So we founded Route History in 2019. And really, just to be honest, it is a for-profit. And we founded it as a souvenir shop. We are located in Springfield, Illinois. It is known as the home of Lincoln. We have all of these great historical treasures. There are millions of tourists that come to Springfield, but very little is known about the Black history of Springfield, in particular along Route 66. Just as someone who, just being completely honest, I didn't see the connection to Route 66, but what I did know is that I knew Black history. I knew that this was a story that needed to be told. And so what Route History does is we share the untold story of Black travelers along Route 66. And so thinking about, we connecting it to the Great Migration as families are traveling, Black families are leaving the rural South, traveling to the North. And so during the time of Jim Crow, needing a book because there were things called sundown towns where Black travelers either could be lynched or they could be badly hurt. And so having to be very strategic and also understanding about community. And so those Black businesses that were located in the Green Book provided life-saving services to those travelers. And so we really just had this idea, and because this was a story that we had to educate ourselves on, that we had to put the story on the walls. And so when people came in, we actually had a very diverse group. They were mostly Republicans. And so we were like, oh, okay, this is a very bipartisan effort. And so we actually are the only attraction, brick and mortar, in the state of Illinois and the United States that shares the untold story of Black experience along Route 66. We tie it to the Jim Crow era, the Great Migration, and the significance of Black businesses along Route 66. We are located in Springfield on alignment of Route 66, a block from Lincoln's home, and we're also within 2 alignments of Route 66. So we opened in 2019. And people start calling us a museum. And we were like, oh no, we're a tourist attraction, And so we eventually just started embracing that. And with our background, so Dr. Gina Lathan is actually the former section chief of immunizations for the Illinois Department of Public Health. And so as public health professionals, our background is grant writing. And so what we do know is how to connect this story to the larger story. And so we wrote a grant, and we actually were able to pay for our building the first year through a minority business capital grant. And so we were able to do these renovations. So this building that you see here is our building. It's about 1,200 square feet. It's an old gas station that was used during the height of Route 66. No, it wasn't in the Green Book, but we have repurposed it to tell the story of Black travelers along Route 66. And so how did this come along? So Dr. Gina Lathan is really the person, was a visionary. And so she at the time was having her first grandchild. And so she was a single mother. She had her first child at 17. And so what she realized, though she was able to finish her education, go on and finish her doctorate, be a senior level administrator for the state of Illinois, she realized there were certain opportunities that she was not able to give her sons that she wanted to make sure that her grandchildren had. And so these are a picture of her 4 grandchildren. And so what she wanted to do was she wanted her of a place for her grandchildren to see themselves, where they could see Black images of people from Springfield, the community that they are growing up in, where it's not abnormal to see Black business owners or to see Black scientists, and just to see themselves. And so there is a lot of research that connects self-regard and self-esteem to decline in community violence. It affects community development. And it also, she just wanted to raise future leaders. And so really this was the impetus of Route History. And so another reason, so I'm actually the child, finding the child in the road. My mother, this is my mother, Mrs. Grundy. She was Shirley Grundy. She's a retired educator. She taught for over 50 years. She was born in 1950, went to a segregated schools. And so while other children were playing in the summer, I was reading Black history books. My mom made sure that I knew who I was. And so things that are common knowledge to me, as the Pullman Porters and the Great Migration, I realized that that is not a story that other children know. And so the tools that my mom instilled in me, I have been able to utilize and actually help create Route History in a way that we're able to tell these stories in an engaging way using technology, so that we can prepare children and also inform tourists and visitors, whoever comes to our city, of the legacy of the communities that we stand. Because in public health, I know you all have heard of the social determinants of health. Place matters, zip codes matter. And so the history of those places also matter. And so for children to see images of not just great Black history figures such as Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, but of local individuals who went to the same high schools that they went to. And so when I tell these stories in the museum, the kids light up and they're like, wow, you all went here, or they lived in my neighborhood, or I walked past this. And so it really has a profound effect on them. And so that's really what we wanted to do with Route History, is just be able to share these stories so that people, children can really know who they are, and so that they know that there is no limit to where they can go. And so what are the stories that we tell in Route History? We tell our story. So Gina and I are actually cousins. Her grandmother and my grandfather are brothers and sisters, and we are products of the Great Migration. Our family migrated from Mississippi. I remember I would sit down with my great uncle, and he would tell me the stories of having to hide when a truck was coming when they were traveling because they thought it was the KKK. Or they would talk about, my mom would go to Missouri to visit her maternal grandmother, and how they would have to call home and let them know that they made it. And so even though we still do that today, it really left a really profound effect on me, because when you think about sundown towns and you think about how dangerous it was to travel during that time, there were a lot of people who didn't make it. And so you see why that is so important, that you might have grandparents who say, make sure you call me and make sure you made it, because it was very dangerous. And so as Black families are leaving the rural South for the first time, they are traveling in places they are totally unknown and foreign to them. They don't know what cities are safe. They don't know what towns are safe. And so if you think about it, you think about people had to use the restroom on the side of the road. They had to take their food and their belongings, everything that they needed, gasoline, traveling at night, traveling with chauffeur hats so that they won't be harassed by the police. And so you think about the the survival tactics and strategy that they had to have. And so while Route 66, the song says get your kicks on Route 66, it wasn't a fun time for everyone. So for a lot of people, while it is a road to opportunity and it was a road to, hopefully more successful opportunities for their families, it could be very dangerous. And so as they're traveling, they needed a book. And so if you've seen the movie The Green Book, you might be familiar. But the Negro Traveler Green Book was written by a Black man, an everyday person. He was a postal worker from New York named Victor Hugo Green. And he had the great idea of compiling addresses of places and restaurants and mechanics and taverns, because you need all the services when you go into a city. And he had this great idea, life-saving idea of compiling these and putting them in a book so that people could travel with ease. And so we have actually highlighted cities in Illinois that were known as Green Book cities, which are Chicago, Joliet, Bloomington, Springfield, Brooklyn, Illinois, and East St. Louis. And so we call them our Green Book cities. And so these were business, and so they provided locations and addresses of businesses that were Black-owned businesses. And so this at the corner is Chancellor's Lounge. It was a Black tavern and diner in Springfield, Illinois. And so through our work, we've been able to conduct some oral histories. I'm a board member for Landmarks Illinois, and so we've been chronicling stories because of systemic racism, urban renewal, a lot of the history has not been preserved. And so throughout history, we have been able to document those stories, and we were able to find out about these individuals. Leslie Chancellor, he also owned a farm that was near the state fair grounds. Harlem nightclub in Brooklyn, Illinois. Learned about that family. What we've also found is that these Black businesses were not just economic engines in their community, they were the community leaders. And if you think about the civil rights movement, it is the Black business owners who fueled the civil rights movement, because they were the ones who founded this space. They helped raise funds to get people out of jail, all of those different things. And so we're able to connect them to the community. In Springfield, for example, a lot of the Black business owners that are found in the Green Book actually funded Little League teams. And so when there was not any social support services or funds, they were the ones who funded those activities. And so you just see this deep connection of their connection to the churches and the connection to the children. And they're the ones who actually were that safety net for the community. So because I mentioned that we have a lot of the history has not been preserved, and so a lot of the businesses no longer exist, we actually partnered with the city of Springfield and wrote a grant to create our Route History virtual reality experience. And so what that is that we are in the final stages of finalizing that. And individuals will come to Springfield, they will put on an Oculus, and they will pick a character. And so there'll be 4 different characters. You can be a family of 4, the Simmons family, which is our family's name, who is traveling from Mississippi to Chicago. You can be a Negro League baseball player who is traveling on a bus. So you will be on the bus with his team. Or you could be a blues singer named Minnie Lightford, and she is traveling and singing in the different taverns and clubs along the route. Or you could be a World War II veteran named Oliver James, who is actually Gina and I's great uncle. And so he was a World War II veteran. And so you will be in his sidecar as he's traveling, and he'll tell you a story. And so we try to make it very conversational instead of just someone giving you facts. And so what we've had to do for that is we've had to drive many, many miles up and down Route 66 talking to individuals in their 90s, in their 80s and 70s, and to just learn about the history. We went to Joliet to the Beacon Social Club. It's the only Black men's social club that is still in existence today. And you don't know how happy they were that I was listening to their stories. I talked to a man who was a bodyguard for Martin Luther King when he was in Joliet. I learned that Lionel Richie is from Joliet. And he was a paper boy. You just learn all of these stories. But one main theme that I found is that they feel that they have been forgotten. They feel that nobody cares. They feel that they are being erased. And so it really just, I feel like route history really is a labor of love, because I'm able to highlight these stories that would have been forgotten, that wouldn't have never been told. And so this is a way that we can tell these stories. And as I talked to the different community leaders, this is just the beginning. This is just a piece, because there's a route history in every community. And so while we are doing this in Springfield, you all can do the same in your community or your schools or wherever organization you are, of finding that history that is local to your communities, that children can identify with and they can see themselves. And they don't have to be, I know a lot of times, we think people have to be an astronaut, but just individuals who sacrificed, went to work every day, who got up, who educated their children the best way they knew how, and made a way. And so that is what we're able to do. And even in the virtual reality, individuals will be able to experience a sundown town, because that was a very real experience of having to be out before the sun went down. And so we're really excited about this partnership, because I've learned so much. I thought I knew a lot. I clearly did not. So I'll give you an example in East St. Louis. If you're riding the route, you'll see True Light Baptist Church was the church that rang its bell during the East St. Louis race riot of 1917, and that warned residents that the mobs were coming. Or you might ride by Miles Davis's home, which is the House of Miles, still located in East St. Louis, and you'll see a young Miles Davis playing. And so Route 66 will be 100 years old in 2026. And so there will be millions of people coming through our state. And so with it starting in Chicago, going all the way to East St. Louis. And so having our children be prepared and having them understand the legacy, because if you think about Chicago, you think about the South Side and the West Side, where people come from. They came from the South. And so this is our story. But a lot of times we're not engaged in Route 66 because our story has never been told. And so what we are doing is showing that all communities have a story in the route. And so they're working on legislation. There's a lot of money tied to Route 66. And so being able to find your story and carve out your niche, so that our children can understand who they are, where they come, with the legacy of the people that they come from. And so that is really what we try to do with Route History. And so another story that we tell. So this is also finding the baby. So this actually, I don't know how many of you all know that the first Black orphanage in the state of Illinois was founded in Springfield, Illinois, and it was called Lincoln's Colored Home. It was founded by a social work pioneer named Eva Carroll Monroe. She was a woman who saw that there were Black orphan children who did not have a home. At the time, there were 3 orphanages in Springfield, and none of them would take in Black children. So what did she do? Her and her sisters had $125, and they opened their home to Black children in 1898. And so you may not have ever heard of her, but this was only 10 years after Jane Addams founded the Hull House in Chicago. And so you might know that University of Illinois School of Social Work is named after Jane Addams, social work pioneer, but also people should know about Eva Carroll Monroe. And so she opened this home. And actually, She partnered with Mary Lawrence, who is, if you've been to Springfield, she's Dana Thomas's mother, and she, who was the mayor at the time, mayor's wife at the time. And so she partnered with her, and they rebuilt the home, which is right before you, in 1904. And so the home was actually designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. And so from 1898 to 1933, she operated this home. Always, she was going around looking for funds, really working to create this. She really created a system of care for children and for seniors. But unfortunately, in 1933, when the profession of social work became to be professionalized, she did not meet the criteria. So she was not grandfathered in. And so her home had to close. And so you think about institutionalized racism, systematic racism. This is how it shows up, is when policies are created that do not take into account individuals who have been doing the work. And so this home has had many owners. It actually was owned by a Tuskegee Airman who actually, and he passed away. His name is Lyman Hubbard Jr., and he passed away in 2012. And he really had he had the vision of creating a children's museum at this home. And so, but he died before that vision was realized. But I would like to let you all know, so you're the first to know, on Wednesday, Route History purchased this home. And so we are very excited because 90 years later, this house and this land has been vacant, but that all changes. And so we will be restoring this home and using virtual reality to tell Eva Carol's Monroe's story. Next slide. And so we will be building the Imagine Route History Complex. So at 427 South 12th Street is where the home is located. So we'll be restoring that home. And then the land next to it, we will be building Imagine Route History, where we will be utilizing virtual reality and augmented reality to teach children about STEAM careers, which is science, technology, engineering, aviation, math, and mathematics. And so we will be building this facility. This was funded through tourism grants. So we're utilizing untraditional methods to do early education, early childhood education. We're doing community development. We're doing economic development. And when I say that, it's because we're going to build a $2.4 million complex that will include a second home for Route History to house our Route 66 and STEM virtual reality. This community is known as this community is a predominantly Black community. It's on the east side of Springfield. The median income is $26,000. And so it'll be 2 blocks from the new multimodal transportation facility that will house public bus and our new high-speed rail, shared ride services. And it also, what we're going to do is we're creating, because a lot of this has not been done, and we're doing this as not novices, but we're doing this as just everyday people. And we're basically creating a network for our Black attractions in the state, in Springfield. Springfield also had it will be nestled between our Black firehouse, Engine House number 5, which was during segregation, the firehouse that Black firemen had to work out of. Also the Ambidexter Institute, which was a Black school for Black children that taught them math, science, and a trade. And so it was known as the Tuskegee of the North. And so throughout history, we have been able to highlight and uplift these stories. And so we're also doing a presentation for the Illinois Department of Transportation, because this is beyond just early childhood. Well, no, it's not. I'm not going to say that. It's not beyond early childhood, because early childhood education is everything. It touches everything. And it also touches our economy, because as you are creating opportunities for children, you're also creating livable wage jobs. You're also increasing the amount of tourists that are coming to our cities, which increases overnight stays, which is sales tax, hotel tax, restaurant tax, also people visiting our additional attractions. But I think for me, what it does is that this lot has been vacant for 90 years. And we will be able to highlight this story that has been forgotten or unknown. And so I just get emotional when I think about it. I actually was able to see the original cornerstone yesterday. And so I'm just, I'm just, I'm just so grateful that God even used us to be able to do this. And so these are some renderings, and these are the renderings from Mr. Hubbard, who actually, this is his vision. He wanted a children's museum next door, which will be our Imagine Route History. And then he wanted to restore the Lincoln's Colored Home. And so talking to his, and so he actually was a Tuskegee Airman. And so that's the reason we added aviation. Being able to teach our children about themselves and about science and having them prepared to take on jobs of the 21st century, but also to think about their minds. A part of my work plan as executive fellow was Imagine Route History. We didn't know if we were going to get funded, but that was a part of my plan. And so we plan to partner with the Springfield Urban League's Early Head Start and Head Start. And so we want to create an interactive play area for the children where they can learn about how a seed grows, learn about these things and have those engagement with technology. So we're really excited about that. All right, and so that really is what we do at Route History. So I'm very busy. So this is, and I always want to say, this is public health. Public health is everything. We work with everyone. We work with education, economy, because early education really touches everything. And I just want to reiterate that. And so as we are talking to legislators, as we are talking to whoever is in the audience, this is the connection, is that when we give opportunities to our children, it will make our communities better. So thank you very much. And I'll take any questions if you have any.